Hello all, today is our revision class. We will revise whatever we have studied yesterday. Today revision class will be for 1 hour. So today we are going to revise the French Revolution and the idea of nation. 15-minute revision: Nationalism in Europe, French Revolution and Napoleon. French Revolution in 1789. The French Revolution was the first clear expression of nationalism. Before revolution, France was ruled by an absolute monarchy. Sovereignty belonged to the king. After revolution, sovereignty transferred to the citizens. People constitute the nation. People shape its destiny. Keywords: la patrie, fatherland, and les citoyen means citizen. Collective identity. Steps taken by French Revolution were la patrie and les citoyens. Tricolor flag adopted. A state general was renamed as National Assembly. National hymns, oaths, and martyrs were taken. Uniform laws were introduced. Internal custom duties abolished. Uniform weights and measures were taken. French language promoted. So this is an important question that will be asked in the board exam. That is, what are the measures taken by French revolutionaries to form a collective identity among people? For that, your answer will be these 8 points and the explanation. First one is la patrie and les citoyens. La patrie means fatherland and les citoyens means the citizen. Second point is tricolor flag adopted instead of royal flag. Third one, General Assembly. A state general was renamed as National Assembly. And fourth one, national hymns, oaths, and martyrs were commemorated. And fifth one, uniform laws. Sixth one, internal custom duties. Internal custom duties were abolished. 7. Uniform weights and measures were adopted. And 8. French language was promoted. While coming to the textbook section, the first clear expression of nationalism came with the French Revolution in 1789. The France, as you will remember, was a fully fledged territorial state in 1789 under the rule of an absolute monarch. The political and constitutional changes that came in the wake of French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. The revolution proclaimed that it was the people who would henceforth constitute the nation and shape its destiny. From the very beginning, the French Revolutionaries introduced various measures and practices that would create a sense of collective identity among the French people. The most important question that has been asked in board exams 5 or 6 times, that is this question. That is, what are the measures or practices that will create a sense of collective identity among the French people? And the answer for this lies in the coming paragraph, in the continuation. That is, the ideas the la patrie, the fatherland, and the les citoyen, the citizen, emphasized the notion of a united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. A new French flag, the tricolor, was chosen to replace the former royal standard. The State General was elected by the body of active citizens and renamed as National Assembly. New hymns were composed, oaths taken, and martyrs commemorated in the name of nation. A centralized administrative system was put in place and it formulated uniform laws for all citizens within its territory. CAS, that is Central Administrative System. Internal custom duties and dues were abolished and a uniform system of weights and measures was adopted. Regional dialects were discouraged and French, as it was spoken and written in Paris, became the common language of the nation. This is the 8 points that you have to write in exam and is very important. Very, very important. How did French revolutionaries create national unity? Write these 8 points. Next one is spread of nationalism. Spread was from French Revolution to students and educated middle class. They created Jacobin clubs, French armies, and nationalism spread. French armies entered in the regions of Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and Italy. Most important lines, French armies carried the idea of nationalism abroad. The revolutionaries further declared that it was the mission and the destiny of the French nation to liberate the peoples of Europe from despotism. In other words, to help people, in other words, to help other peoples of Europe to become nations. Yesterday, we have gone through the meaning of despotism. What was despotism meaning? Despotism is a system of government in which one ruler holds absolute power and exercises it without meaningful limits from laws, institutions, or the people. It includes concentrated authority in one person or small group, limited political freedoms, weak or absent checks and balance. Just think that will be only one ruler. Is a system of government in which one ruler holds absolute power and exercises it. So there will be a ruler and he holds the absolute power. When the news of the So what did the revolutionaries try? The revolutionaries further declared that it was the mission and the destiny of the French nation to liberate the peoples of Europe from despotism. These revolutionaries tried to liberate the people of French from despotism. They don't wanted a king who ruled the entire country. They wanted people's participation. When the news of the events in France reached the different cities of Europe, students and other members of educated middle class students and members of educated middle class began setting up Jacobin clubs. Their activities and campaigns prepared the way for French armies which moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland and much of Italy in the 1790s. With the outbreak of revolutionary wars, the French armies began to carry the idea of nationalism abroad. Next one is Napoleon. Civil Code of 1804. Civil Code of 1804 is known as Napoleonic Code. Features it abolished birth privileges, equality before law, and right to property. Abolished birth privileges, established equality before law, and right to property was secured. Exported to Dutch Republic, Switzerland, Italy, Germany. Features of Napoleonic Code: birth privileges abolished, equality before law and right to property. Napoleon's reforms: administrative reforms, simplified administration, abolished feudalism, ended serfdom, ended manorial dues, removed guild restrictions. Economic reforms: uniform laws was introduced, common currency was introduced, standard weights and measures were introduced. Sorry. Napoleonic Code, Civil Code of 1804, abolished birth privileges, equality before law, right to property, exported to Dutch Republic, Switzerland, Italy, Germany. But features of Napoleonic Code: birth privileges abolished, equality before law and right to property. Napoleon's reforms: administrative reforms, simplified administration, abolished feudalism, ended serfdom, ended manorial dues, removed guild restrictions. Economic reforms: uniform laws, common currency, standardized weights and measures were introduced, benefited by businessmen and small producers. Hostility to French rule. Initially, French armies welcomed us. Within the wide swath of territory that came under his control, Napoleon set about introducing many of the reforms that he had already introduced in France. Through a return to monarchy, Napoleon had no doubt destroyed democracy in France, but in administrative field he had incorporated revolutionary principles. In order to make the whole system more rational and efficient, the Civil Code of 1804, usually known as Napoleonic Code, did away with all privileges based on birth, established equality before law, and secured right to property. This code was exported to regions under French control in the Dutch Republic, in Switzerland, Italy, Germany. Napoleon simplified administrative divisions, abolished the feudal system, and freed the peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. In the towns, too, guild restrictions guild restrictions were removed. Its transport and communication systems were improved. Peasants, artisans, workers, and new businessmen enjoyed the newfound freedom. Businessmen and small scale producers of goods, in particular, began to realize that uniform laws, standardized weights and measures, and a common national currency would facilitate the movement and exchange of goods and capital from one region to another. This is also one of the most important questions that has been asked recently on exams, board exams. Napoleonic Code is also known as Civil Code of 1804. When did this Civil Code introduced? In 1804. Who introduced it? Napoleon Bonaparte. In which country it was introduced? France. France. Now, what are the main features of Napoleonic Code? First one, it established right to equality. That is, all are equal before the eyes of law. Second one, it secured right to property. Third one, abolished birth privileges. That is, nobles received a large number of privileges based on their birth. So, by birth, who all got that privileges, that all were abolished. So, all become equal. And this Napoleonic Code was exported to Dutch Republic, Switzerland, Italy, and Germany. Previous year question: features of Napoleonic Code. In features, we have to mention this also. That is administrative reforms, economic reforms. That were also part of the Napoleonic Code 1804. What was the administrative reforms? He simplified the administration. He made administration more rational. And second one, he abolished feudalism. Third one, he freed the peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. Uniform laws was introduced. Uniform weights and measures were introduced. Standard weights and measures were introduced. And common currency was introduced. Uniform laws were introduced. Also removed guild restrictions. Benefited, the people who benefited from them was businessmen, peasants, workers, artisans, etc. Transport and communications were also improved. Now, hostility to French rule. The two points that are common to this Napoleonic Code, and when studying about the collective identity of French Revolution, we can say that uniform laws were introduced, and also a standard weights and measures were introduced. These 2 points you can write both for Napoleonic Code and that French Revolution identified nation as a collective unity. That question also. Because I will show you here in French Revolution, you can see uniform laws by under a centralized administrative system. Also, uniform weights system of weights and measures was adopted. And coming to Napoleonic Code also, uniform laws, standardized weights and measures were introduced. So these 2 points you can write for both Napoleonic Code and French Revolution. Hostility to French rule. French armies welcomed as harbingers of liberty. Later, hostility because no political freedom, increased taxation, censorship, and conscription. These are the 4 points that led to the hate towards Napoleonic rule. There was no political freedom for the people, and increased taxation, censorship, and conscription. Conscription means forced military service. People were forced to join the army without their consent. And censorship means restriction on speech and publication. For example, for writing books, newspapers, similar kind of speech or publications were restricted. That is known as censorship. So, why did people hate Napoleonic Code, or why hostility occurred? Hostility towards French rule occurred. Why? The reasons were: one, censorship, conscription, then no political power to the people, increased taxation. Here you can see, however, in the areas conquered, the reaction of the local population to French rule were mixed. Initially, in many places, such as Holland and Switzerland, as well as in certain cities like Brussels, Mainz, Milan, and Warsaw, the French armies were welcomed as harbingers of liberty. But the initial enthusiasm soon turned into hostility, as it became clear that the new administrative arrangements did not go in hand with political freedom. Increased taxation, censorship, forced conscription to the French armies required to conquer the rest of Europe all seemed to outweigh the advantages of administrative changes. That means, what all advantages does the administrative changes brought that were overweight or that were less as compared to the this reason, that is as compared to increased taxation, censorship, forced conscription, and the political lack of political freedom, that all reasons outweighed the advantages of administrative changes. The courier of Rhineland loses all that he has on his way home Leipzig. Napoleon here is represented as a postman on his way back to France after he lost the Battle of Leipzig in 1830. Each letter dropping out of his bag bears the names of the territories he lost. And this was another figure, the planting of the tree of liberty in Zweibrücken, Germany. The subject of this color print by the German painter Karl Caspar Fritz is the occupation of the town of Zweibrücken by the French armies. French soldiers, recognizable by their blue, white, and red uniform. These all are French armies. Have been portrayed as oppressors as they seize a peasant's cart left. This one. Harass young woman, center foreground here, and force a peasant down to his knees. Maybe this one. The plague being affixed to the tree of liberty carries a German inscription which in translation reads, "Take freedom and equality from us, the model of humanity." Take freedom and equality from us, the model of humanity. This is a sarcastic reference to the claim of the French as being liberators who opposed monarchy in the territories they entered. There is one more figure. The cover of German almanac designed by the journalist Andreas Rebmann in 1798. The image of the French Bastille being stormed by the revolutionary crowd has been placed next to similar fortress meant to represent the bastion of despotic rule in the German province of Kassel. Accompanying the illustration is the slogan, "The people must seize their own freedom." Rebmann lived in the city of Mainz and was a member of German Jacobin group. So most important keywords: Le Patrie means fatherland, Le Citoyen means citizen, Tricolor means national flag, National Assembly new name of a state general, Napoleonic Code Civil Code of 1804, conscription means forced army service, and censorship means restriction on speech. Harbingers of liberty means bringers of freedom. 1789 French Revolution, first clear expression of nationalism came. Sovereignty, the power was transferred from people to citizens, from king to citizens. Le Patrie, the fatherland. Le Citoyen, the citizen. Tricolor adopted. Jacobin clubs spread revolutionary ideas. Napoleonic Code 1804 was developed. Equality before law. Hostility means taxes plus censorship plus conscription. How did the French Revolution and Napoleon contributed to the nationalism in Europe? Sovereignty was transferred from monarchy to citizen. Le Patrie and Le Citoyen promoted the national identity. Tricolor and National Assembly created unity. Jacobin clubs spread revolutionary ideas. French army spread nationalism abroad. Napoleonic Code established the equality before law. Feudalism and serfdom were abolished. Uniform laws, currency, weights, and measures promoted unity. If you recall these 8 points, you can answer almost every 3 mark and 5 mark question from the portion you have studied. Okay. MCQ. Who became the source of sovereignty after the French Revolution? Citizens. The French Revolution transferred sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. The ideas of Le Patrie and Le Citoyen stood for fatherland and the citizen. La Patrie, fatherland, Le Citoyen, citizen. These ideas emphasized a united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. Which flag replaced the royal standard in France? Royal standard was replaced by tricolor flag. The tricolor flag replaced the royal standard and became a symbol of the French nation. The States General was renamed as National Assembly. The States General was renamed the National Assembly, symbolizing that it represented the French nation and its citizens, who started setting up Jacobin clubs in different cities of Europe, students and educated middle classes. They were inspired by the events of French Revolution and formed Jacobin clubs to spread revolutionary ideas across Europe. The Civil Code of 1804 is known as Napoleonic Code. Abolished privileges based on birth, equality before law, and right to property. Which of the following was abolished by Napoleon? Equality before law, right to property, privileges based on birth, uniform laws. Abolished. Privileges based on birth were abolished. Napoleon's code abolished privileges based on birth, established equality before law, and secured the right to property. Which group benefited the most from Napoleonic reforms? Businessmen and small producers. The group which benefited the most from Napoleon's reforms are peasants, artisans, workers, and new businessmen. They benefited from uniform laws, standard weights and measures, common national currency, improved transport and communication. These reforms made trade easier and increased profits. French armies were initially welcomed as harbingers of liberty. Harbingers of liberty means bringers of freedom. Initially, many Europeans welcomed French armies because they hoped they would end feudalism, bring liberty and equality, introduce modern reforms. Which of the following caused hostility towards French rule? Increased taxation, censorship, and conscription. What is censorship? Restriction of news and information. Restriction on speech, restriction on news, that is called censorship. And what is conscription? Conscription means forced recruitment of French people to the army without their consent. These were the main reasons why people turned against French rule: increased taxation, censorship, forced conscription or military service, lack of political freedom. Which one of the following is correctly matched? Le patrie, citizen, no. Le citoyen, fatherland, no. Conscription, forced military service, yes. Censorship, equality for law, no. C. Correct matches: Le patrie, fatherland, le citoyen, citizen, conscription, forced military service, and censorship, restriction on speech or publications. Arrange the following in the correct sequence: Napoleonic Code, French Revolution, Jacobin clubs, French army spread nationalism. Napoleonic Code in 1804, French Revolution 1789, Jacobin clubs 1790. So first will be French Revolution 2, then Jacobin clubs 3, then French army spread nationalism 4, and 1 Napoleonic Code. 2, 3, 4, 1. Maybe the answer will be A. Yes. French Revolution 1789, Jacobin club spread revolutionary ideas, French army spread nationalism in Europe, Napoleonic Code 1804 introduced reforms. Which of the following was not a measure taken by the French revolutionaries to create national unity? Tricolor flag that was introduced, National Assembly. No, yes, National Assembly. State Assembly was renamed as National Assembly. The promotion of regional dialects. No, regional dialects were discouraged, and instead of that, French language was tried to be used. Uniform laws was introduced along with the standard weights and measures. So the answer is C. Explanation: French revolutionaries did not promote regional dialects. They discouraged regional dialects, promoted French as spoken and written in Paris as the common national language. Okay. What was the most revolutionary idea introduced by the French Revolution? Most revolutionary idea that is introduced by French Revolution. Uniform weights and measures, adoption of tricolor flag, the people constitute the nation and are the source of sovereignty, abolition of custom duties. C. It is the most revolutionary idea introduced by the French Revolution. That means, why is it the most revolutionary idea? Before the French Revolution, sovereignty belonged to the king. Sovereignty means the supreme power. After the French Revolution, sovereignty belonged to the nation people. Citizen became the source of political power. This idea became the foundation of modern nationalism. Which of the following statement is correct? Napoleon established democracy in France. Napoleon abolished equality before law. Napoleon retained revolutionary ideas in administration but destroyed democracy in France. Napoleon restored feudalism in Europe. Correct. Napoleon retained revolutionary ideas in administration but destroyed democracy in France. That is the most probable answer. Napoleon was a mixed figure. Napoleonic Code 1804 was introduced, equality before law introduced, right to property was secured, end of feudalism, end of serfdom for peasants, uniform laws was introduced, common currency was introduced. Negative side: he destroyed democracy in France, returned to monarchy, became emperor, increased taxation, censorship, forced conscription. Which one of the following was introduced to facilitate the movement and exchange of goods and capitals? Which one of the following was introduced to facilitate the movement and exchange of goods and capital? Guild restrictions. Which of the following was introduced to facilitate the movement and exchange of goods and capital? No. Feudal dues, common national currency. Due to the introduction of common national currency, the facilitation of movement and exchange of goods and capital become very easy. A common national currency made trade easier by facilitating the movement and exchange of goods and capital across regions. Guild restriction hindered trade, feudal dues burdened peasants, conscription was forced military service. Which of the following reforms was welcomed by businessmen but did not necessarily provide political freedom? Which of the following reforms was welcomed by businessmen but did not necessarily provide political freedom? Uniform laws and common currency, national hymns and oaths, tricolor flag, Jacobins Club. Uniform laws and common currency. Explanation. Businessmen welcomed Napoleon's reforms because uniform laws simplified trade, common currency facilitated exchange, standardized weights and measures reduced confusion. However, these reforms did not provide political freedom, which is why many people later become hostile to French rule. Which pair is incorrectly matched? Le patrie, fatherland, le citoyen, citizen, conscription, freedom of speech, censorship, restriction on publications. Incorrectly matched is conscription. Conscription means uh, forced work in military. Forced the French people to join military to fight for the nation without their consent. That is called conscription. See. Freedom of speech is the opposite of censorship. Le patrie, fatherland, le citoyen, citizen, conscription, forced military service, censorship, restriction on publications or speech. Which one of the following statement is not correct? The Napoleonic Code abolished privileges based on birth. The Napoleonic Code abolished privileges based on birth. Yes. French armies were initially welcomed as harbingers of liberty. Yes. Political freedom accompanied all French administrative reforms. Doubtful. The French Revolution transfers sovereignty from monarchy to citizen. That's also correct. So option C will be the most probable answer. Political freedom accompanied all French administrative reforms. Now, after some time, political freedom was lost from the hands of people. Why is not correct? NCRT clearly states the new administrative arrangements did not go in hand in hand with political freedom. Although Napoleon introduced uniform laws, equality before law, common currency, standardized weights and measures, people still lacked political freedom. Freedom from censorship, freedom from forced conscription. The Civil Code of 1804 was significant because it restored feudal privileges, established equality before law and abolished birthplace privileges, promoted regional dialects, increased power of nobles. B. established equality before law and abolished feudalism and abolished birth-based privileges. Why is the Napoleonic Code important? Napoleonic Code 1804 abolished privileges based on birth, established equality before law, secured the right to property. These reforms spread revolutionary ideas across Europe and influenced many later legal systems. French Revolution. First clear expression of nationalism. Sovereignty has transferred from the hands of monarchy to the citizens. Le Patrie, fatherland, Le Citoyen, citizen, tricolor adopted, and National Assembly was formed. Spread of nationalism. Jacobin clubs were spread ideas. French armies spread nationalism abroad. Napoleonic Code 1804, equality before law, no birth privileges and right to property. Reforms, end of feudalism, end of serfdom, removal of guild restrictions, uniform laws, common currency, standardized weights and measures. Hostility to French rule, no political freedom, increased taxation, censorship, and conscription. You have revised the entire portion: French Revolution, collective identity, Jacobin clubs, French armies, Napoleon, Napoleonic Code, reforms, hostility to French rule. You need to fill in the blanks. The French Revolution took place in 1789. The French Revolution was the clear expression of nationalism. Sovereignty was transferred from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. Le Patrie means fatherland. Le Citoyen means citizen. The tricolor flag replaced the royal standard. A state general was renamed as the General Assembly. National hymns, oaths, and martyrs were introduced or commemorated. Internal custom duties were abolished. A uniform system of weights and measures was introduced. Level 1 answers. Solar car, 1718, nationalism, citizens, Le Patrie, fatherland, less citizen, tricolor flag were replaced by royal flag standard. The general was named as National Assembly. National hymns, oaths, and martyrs were introduced. Internal custom duties were abolished. Uniform weights and measures was introduced. Second level, French as spoken and written in Paris became the common language. Student and educated middle classes set up Jacobin clubs. French armies moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and much of Italy. French armies carried the idea of nationalism abroad. Civil Code of 1804 is known as the Napoleonic Code. Napoleonic Code abolished privileges based on birth. Napoleonic Code established equality before the law. Napoleonic Code secured the right to security. Peasants were freed from serfdom and manorial dues. Guild restrictions were removed in towns. French is spoken and written in Paris. Students and educated middle class set up Jacobins Club. French armies moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and much of Italy. French armies carried the idea of nationalism abroad. The Civil Code of 1804, known as Napoleonic Code. Napoleonic Code abolished privileges based on birth. Napoleonic Code established equality before law. Napoleonic Code secured right to property. Peasants were freed from serfdom and minority reduced. Skill restrictions were removed in towns. Level 3 challenge. Napoleon simplified administrative reforms. Businessmen benefited from uniform laws and a common national currency. Standardized weights and measures helped trade. French armies were welcomed as harbingers of liberty. The new administrative arrangements did not go in hand with political power. Increased dash made people hostile to French rule. Increased taxation. Dash restricted freedom of speech and publications. Censorship. Conscription means forced military joining for services. Many Europeans felt that the disadvantages of French rule outweighed the administrative improvements. Administrative changes. Napoleon destroyed dash in France and returned to monarchy. Democracy in France. Answers. Napoleon simplified administrative divisions. Okay. Businessmen benefited from common national currency, weights and measures, harbingers of liberty, political freedom. The new administrative arrangements did not go in hand with the political freedom. Increased taxation, censorship, conscription, military service. Europeans felt that the disadvantages of the British rule outweighed the French rule outweighed the administrative advantages. Okay. No, in the textbook it is given as the many Europeans felt that a disadvantages of French rule outweighed the administrative advantages. It's correct. Napoleon destroyed democracy in France and returned to monarchy. Level 4. Now this is challenge. Challenge, fill in the blanks. The people constitute the dash and shape its destiny. Assembly? No. Jacobin clubs prepared the way for French armies. The Napoleonic Code was exported to Switzerland, Italy, Germany, and the Dutch Republic. Removal of guild restrictions promoted economic barriers. Uniform laws facilitated the movement of goods and services. French revolutionaries promoted a sense of collective identity. The ideas of Laplace and Lasseter emphasized equal rights under a French army spread the ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The French Revolution inspired nationalist movement throughout the Europe or world. The most revolutionary principle of the French Revolution was that sovereignty belongs to the people. The people constitute the nation and change its destiny. Okay. Jacobin clubs, French armies, Dutch Republic promote economic freedom. Removal of guild restrictions promoted economic freedom. Uniform laws facilitated the movements of goods and capital. Okay. Collective identity, constitution, Under Leparty and Les Citoyen emphasized equal rights under a constitution. Nationalism. Oh, French armies spread the ideas of liberty, equality, and nationalism, not fraternity, throughout the Europe nation. Okay, the session is ended. Hope we revised the full chapter of spreading the nationalism in